Mr. Stott, thank
Hi,
you for
how are
meeting
you?
with me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, so where are you from originally?
I was born at Fort Sam Houston, Texas in 1949.
And what was life like growing up for you?
Well, I'm what you call an Air Force brat. My dad was in the military, Air Force for 32 years, and we went from San Antonio, Texas to Amarillo, Texas, then to Biloxi, Mississippi, and then we ended up here in Colorado Springs in 1963, and he retired here in, with my mom and everything.
All right. When did you join the military and why?
I joined the military in 1969 when I graduated from high school in '68. Joined on Valentine's Day, February. And I was working out at the hospital at Fort Carson in medical supply division out there in civil service. And I saw a poster on the wall in the hall, one of the hallways that said high school to flight school on it. And so I went down, talked to a recruiter, a friend of mine, we both did, and he told us what we had to go through, had to take tests and everything. And he said, if you want, you guys could go in on the buddy system. And I said, okay, that'll be good. So we joined, got sworn in together and everything, and then we went to Denver for the processing. And then from there, we went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic. And that's where I took my flight physical. I passed mine, he failed his, and he ended up in the military police. And I ran into him in Vietnam when I went up to I Corps, which was the northern part of the South Vietnam, and is up by the DMZ.
What was daily life as a soldier like for you?
Well, my daily life when I went in was course basic, which is constant training and everything else. And then from Fort Polk, Louisiana, we went to Fort Walters, Texas, and there's about 16 Trailways buses that they bused us there. And we got into Fort Walters, it was about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and they put us in the gymnasium. And they go, okay, we're going to count off, and everybody counted off, and the TAC officer, which were warrants that were helicopter pilots already, been in Vietnam, and he came down to the mid court on the basketball court. He goes, okay, everybody to the left of this line, go back out, get your bags, get on the bus. The rest of you that are on the other side of the line, you will stay here, and I want you to write me a request for leave, and you'll be going home for 10 days. And then you'll report back here, and then you'll go into your training camp or training cycle. And he said, I don't care what you do, what you write down or anything. If you got a dog or a pet that died, that's good. And I thought that was kind of funny, being a military family brat. And so I came back here to Colorado Springs for my 10 days and then took my 57 Chevy down with me.
What was it like trying to stay in contact with your family and friends overseas?
When I went overseas in Vietnam, all you had was letters you could write. If you were lucky enough, like I was, stationed at Lai Kay, we had a control tower there which had a high frequency radio, and he could get a hold of people back on the stateside, and they would patch you in to telephone. And while you're talking on the telephone, you had to say over so the operator at the other end could open the wire to your parents or whatever. And that was, my mom was tough for her because saying over every time she ended. And it was pretty good being in aviation.
How long were you in the military?
I was in for 24 years, 6 months.
And what was life like when you got out? How was adjusting to civilian life?
Oh, it's not that bad. You kind of, with the military background and everything, you know what to expect more or less, and that helped me out a lot in the jobs I've had on the outside.
Um, would you be willing to share any combat experience or stories that you have?
Well, it was in November of '70. They said, "Yeah, you guys will be going home early. They're going to disband the unit. You need to pack up your stuff that you want to be shipped, and we'll put it in a Connex and then ship it back." So we did that, and we went out on a mission. There were 7 slicks and 2 guns, which I flew guns, and we came back to the unit, and they said, "You need to report to the officers club." We said, "Okay." So we're going walking through the quadrangle where the aviators slept, and there were MPs all around the officers club. So we're going, "Okay, what's going on now?" So we got over to the O club, sat down, and this colonel came up, and he says, "I'm from the S3 from battalion." He says, "You guys won't be going home. We got a mission for you that you'll be going on. You'll take your aircraft and your basic uniform stuff. We didn't get to take our stereos or anything with us." And so we got up 2 mornings later, and he said, "Yeah, here's your map." They gave us, and he says, "Fly this up to 2 Corps along the coastline. You'll find a old Air Force base up there that's now an Army field, and you'll land there and refuel, spend the night." So we did that, got up. Next morning, and they said, "All you do is follow the coastline north, and you got stops up there." And they gave us the maps and everything with the stops. The last stop we got to was Quan Tree, which is up in Icor, right on the coast. We refueled there, and they go, "Okay, just follow the coastline up about 30 minutes, and I'll contact operations, Robin Hood Ops, and they will direct you from there." And I was the lead gunship with a team of 2, and I got up to the coastline, and I saw the C-130 landing at an airstrip. So I got on the radio, and I said, called Robin Hood, and I said, "This is Crossbow 33. I said, "Did you just have a big bird land at your side with cherry smoke?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I've got your location and all." We landed there, got out of the aircraft after we shut them down, and the ops officer came over to me, and Captain Johnson, and he goes, "Come here with me to the edge of the tarmac." And I said, "Okay." So I walked over to the edge, and he goes, "Look way out there in the horizon, you'll see this big tower." And I go, "What's that?" And he says, "That's the southern end of the DMZ." And I'm going, man, here I am getting ready to leave in March of the next year, and I'm up here, and I said, "I don't need to be here." So anyway, we got our briefing and what our operations was going to be, and we ended up in what they called, the mission was Lam Son 719, where we supported the South Vietnamese troops with airlift power to get them into the Laos and to go to Chacon, which was supposedly the big MVA supply depot in there. And we did it. It took us about almost 2 months to go along the Mekong and get up in there. And we lost a lot of aircraft, a lot of people during that mission, and all. It was quite the experience for a young kid, because I'd already turned 21 in November before we went up there. And most of your aviators were young. A lot of them weren't. Most of them were under 21 before they even got to Vietnam. And one particular day, we were up there, and our battalion had, I think it was about 36 gunships, Charlie models. And that day we lost almost 27 of them. And I was one of the lucky ones out of my unit that was still flying. And when we ended that day, they said, yeah, you two people need to stay up here at Caisson for the night in case we got any emergency supplies that need to be dropped or ammunition or anything, and you'll be the gun coverage. I said, okay, sir. You know, so that was the, I guess, most trying time on everybody that was over there, because he lost a lot of friends.
How did you deal with the stress and pressure of everyday life over in Vietnam?
Well, if you were lucky enough, you had Budweiser beer in the aluminum can. If you didn't, you had Pabst Blue Ribbon with the rusty bottom on it. So, and back at Light K, you had your stereo, which everybody listened to the acid rock songs and everything. And that was relaxing. Of course, you had the camaraderie of the people with you, and all that helped a lot too.
What's one thing that you learned overseas that you use every day, or once a week, or on occasion in civilian life?
Is to adapt to the situation as quick as possible. You know, and that's in transporting students. That's an everyday thing, and I find it, you know, it's comfortable, and all, and I enjoy it, and I get a lot of respect, especially from the students here the other day on Veterans Day, and everything that meant a lot to me.
When you left the service, why'd you leave? Like, what caused you to get out?
I came down on orders for Fairbanks, Alaska, to go to the CH-47 unit up there, and I did some research, and I said, what do these guys do in 47? They said, well, they do the winter survival course up there, which you go out in the field and support the unit, the trainees and everything. And I said, okay. I said, how long is that? And he goes, well, you probably spend 2 to 3 weeks out there, depending on the course they're going through. So I went back and talked to the wife, because we'd come back from Hawaii 3 years earlier. I said, well, they're going to ship us up to Alaska. And she goes, I'm not going. It's too cold. And I said, well, I can go on a single tour. She goes, do you really want to do that? And I thought about it for a few days, and I said, no, I've got enough years to retire. And I went in and put my paperwork in and got out a year later on 1st of December.
When you got out, why did you move to Colorado? Were you already here, and was it convenient, or?
Well, yeah, I'd been stationed here once before with the 507 medevac unit as a medevac pilot. We went to Hawaii, spent 3 years there, came back here to Fort Carson, and we both, I met her here when I was in 9th grade at Washington Irving, when they first opened that school, and we'd stayed in contact and everything. And when I came back from my Korean tour, a friend of mine who was a realtor, he said, Marty's still here. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, and she's divorced. And I said, oh, that's too bad. And I got mine while I was in Korea. My wife sent me what we call Dear John letter. And so I found an apartment, got set up and everything, and I drove down and met her and walked into her office. And she goes, Frank told me you were coming back. I said, yeah. I said, I'm stationed out at Carson, be here for a while. And we just started dating and everything, hit it off, and then we had a little girl and got married in Hawaii. And that's where we're at today. And when she's, you know, she's a great lady. And her one thing when she was in high school, she says, I'm never going to marry into the military.
Well, thank you for your service. And
well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Because It's completely different now with the troops coming back because I work out at Fort Carson. I take the troops out, they leave ADAC, and when they come back, we pick them back up and take them to the event center out there to meet their families and everything, which that's a big spirit lifting thing for me because as I don't know if you know or not, but when the Vietnamese soldiers came back and everybody, the Harry Parishioners were calling us baby killers,
Yeah.
and I got spit on at San Francisco airport.
Yeah, I read a lot about what happened to Vietnam soldiers when they came
Yeah.
back, and it's pretty
There-
horrible.
Yeah, and you know, because you got a commercial plane ticket when you got back to California and at Travis, and you had to get your own flight and everything. And you know, but to have family here at Colorado Springs meet me, that was a big uplifting. You know. So, and I still keep in touch with a lot of my. In fact, my crew chief, Dennis Lundstrom, is up in South Dakota, Sioux City, and him and I stay in constant contact, and he'll come down here with his wife, and we'll go up there and every other year and spend time together. So, and you always meet somebody on Facebook now. They say, "Hey, I know you," blah blah blah, and then you know, that's
Yeah.
a pretty good. That social media is pretty good to keep in touch with the old people,
Yeah.
you know, from your unit. So, but I had a good career. I loved the military. You know, it was good to me and everything. It still is. So,
Yeah. Military has been good to a lot of people.
yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And they take care of the troops now much better than they did during the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
You know, because they got the support units and everything on the posts for families that are staying back. And if I would have been in military housing and went to Vietnam, the family would have had to move out of the military housing. Now they let them stay there until their husband gets back, and 99% of them are assigned to the same unit when they get back. So,
Yeah.
which makes a healthy environment for the young people now. So, but thanks for the opportunity to talk with you.
Well, thanks for meeting with me.
It was my pleasure.
Hello, Mr. Mintz. Thank you for meeting with us.
No problem.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from Park Forest, Illinois, suburb of Chicago. That's where I was raised. My father was in the Army, so we moved a lot, about every 3 years. But for the most part, I spent my from 5th grade on in that town, Park Forest, Illinois, southwest of Chicago.
What was your reasoning behind joining the military?
Well, actually, there were a few reasons. Primarily financial. I was when I joined the military, I had completed 2.5 years of college. Didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. The GI Bill was available, and I decided I would go ahead and join the military to get GI Bill benefits. And perhaps during that time, I would figure out exactly where I wanted to go in life. I didn't have a career path in mind at that time.
What branch of military were you in?
Army.
And when you joined, was America at war?
Yes, the Vietnam War was going on.
What was life like for you as a soldier?
A little bit different than what it is today. I presently have a part-time job working on the weekends with the Army, and they're treated pretty well. It was different, but it wasn't anything I didn't expect. Having been a military brat, I had a general idea of what life was going to be like in the Army, and I accepted that. It appeared that the general attitude of the public towards the military was kind of a low opinion. There was a lot of anti-war things going on. The military was looked at in a more or less a derogatory way. If you were a soldier, you were really nothing more than a number. Nobody really wanted to know you, and I think that's changed now, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah. When did you leave the military or become part-time?
I stayed active duty from when I first started in '67. October '67 is when I went on active duty, and I stayed on active duty through February of '94. That's when I retired. It was all active duty time, so there was no National Guard or reserve time involved in any of that. It was straight through.
Were you ever involved in combat, and would you be willing to share one of your experiences?
Yeah, when I finished basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in let's see, the end of '68, per my agreement with my recruiter, I went straight to flight school. I did not want to join the military and carry a rifle through the bushes. That was not my goal. I decided that if I was going to join the military, that it was going to be as an aviator. And as a kid, I always kind of dreamed about being a pilot anyway. And so this was an opportunity, and I took it, went straight to flight school, and graduated flight school in October of '68. I went straight to Vietnam, as did most of my class. My flight school class was 250 men. And just as an aside, only about half of us came back. It's a one-year tour, and I went to Da Nang, Vietnam. It was in I Corps, where I became a pilot in an assault helicopter company, 282nd Assault Helicopter Company. Mostly single ship missions, but they had a gunship platoon. And I served 1 year as a slick pilot, what they call a slick pilot. That's flying utility helicopters, the Hueys. And you've probably seen them on TV and in the movies, 3, 4, 5 ships coming into a landing zone, dropping off troops or picking up troops and coming back out, and things blowing up around you. I did that for a year. By the way, I'd like to take this opportunity to plug a good book on exactly what I did, and it was written by a pilot in my unit, Black Cat 2-1. And it's a really interesting book, and it describes almost exactly what I did for a year and a half over there. Okay. Well, that tour ended in October of '69. I took a 30-day leave and then came back for 6 more months, and it was a calculated risk. Did not have an overpowering desire to go back to war, but it was still going on. Things were pretty heated over there at that time, and I decided if I extend for 6 months for my same unit, which I was already familiar with, that I may be able to not have to serve another full tour. So I did. I extended for 6 months, came back after a 30-day leave to see my family, and decided I felt like flying gunships. So I got into the gunship platoon and flew attack helicopters for 6 months till June of '70. And as far as any experiences, there are too many to describe. I may note that my memory has kind of blanked out on a lot of what happened over there for that year and a half. I don't remember a lot of it. I do have 30% disability for PTSD. And part of that is memory loss. Not memory loss in general, but just memory loss for that during that period of time. But I do remember quite a few events over there. I got an air medal with a V device for valor for a mission I flew once. And what can I say? There were a lot of events. Seeing red glowing things come at me and pulling a trigger and watching red glowing things going back down there, seeing some of my worst memories were when I was flying slicks, picking up guys that were burned and cut in half and dead and bringing them back to Da Nang. You've all heard of the show China Beach. That was the hospital near where I was stationed. Bringing bodies in there continuously. Most of what we flew in slicks were single ship missions. And there was one where we picked up a Marine that had been killed and set out on a raft, and they found him 2 weeks later, and his body was decomposed, and they loaded it on my aircraft. That's when I first got there. After about 1 week, we picked up this body on the raft, and it was so decomposed that they couldn't remove it from the raft. It was in partial liquid condition, and I think I'll never forget the smell of that when they loaded it on. The air flows in a UH-1 helicopter. The air flows forward, and it came up into the cockpit. And it was a smell I'll never forget. And the smell of decomposing anything just really, it brings back a flashback of that, and it's not happy. There were a lot of unhappy memories, but there were some good memories too. There was a lot of camaraderie between myself and the other pilots. We'd come back to the club at night, and we'd all talk about our experiences during the day, and you get pretty close to the guys that you serve with in combat, and I still stay in touch with most of them. And we have actually, the unit was the 282nd was the Black Cats, and we have a Black Cat Association where we all communicate by email, and they have a little newsletter, and so we stay together, which is a good thing. Camaraderie is what I miss most, actually.
Yeah. What was life like adjusting when you got out? Like, I've always heard the term, or not term, the saying, we put on rose-colored glasses and we look over what we've done, as in you put on a happy face and you tell people the good things. Does that help while adjusting to normal life, or is it just something that...
Other than my own family and some friends I had, most of my friends were other military guys that I was serving with after the war. We didn't have to put on any rose-colored glasses. I told my family when I came back, they asked a lot of questions, and I told them exactly what I experienced. And like I said, society in general, American society in general, was against the war. And I knew that. So I didn't really associate that much with civilian people outside my own circle. And when some of them would become aggressive, I would just ignore them. I didn't engage with those people. There was the Hare Krishnas in the airports that would, give you the stink eye, or spit on you, or ask you how many babies did you kill today, or over there, and I would ignore them. I didn't have a lot of interrelations with the anti-war people, and there were plenty of them. First
You,
televised war,
yeah.
we were all monsters. And if you had short hair, which we had to have in the military, you were easy to pick out, even if you were in your civilian clothes. Oh, look, that's an Army guy. Yeah, let's go give him a hard time. So, yeah, it was hard that way. Now these guys come back from Afghanistan and they get accolades, and it's a good thing. I'm glad to see that attitude didn't prevail.
Yeah. What's one thing that you learned overseas that you use on a daily basis?
There was a lot of overseas. Okay, there was combat, of course, but I served a 4-year tour in Europe, in Germany, and I served 4 years in Hawaii, which I don't know if you would consider that overseas, that being an American state and all, but unlike what a lot of people may think, life in the military is really not a whole lot different than life in the civilian world in a large corporation. There's a hierarchy. Everybody has a boss right on up to the commander-in-chief. And you do what your boss tells you to do. There's a chain of command. Your immediate supervisor has another immediate supervisor above him. And yes, there are certain things that military people are expected to do. You unquestionably do what your supervisor tells you to do. If you don't, there are legal implications. And it's not like in a civilian world where you just, your boss tells you something you don't like, or you don't like your boss, you just, say, give him a 4-letter word and walk out the door, Not so in the military. Okay, so there's the difference there. So I learned to let things roll off my back. If somebody annoyed me or my supervisor annoyed me, I would learn to just store it, and not react. And I think I got pretty good at it. Okay, I progressed to the rank of W4, which at that time was the highest rank a warrant officer could get. And I think that was part of it. I didn't react emotionally to things that annoyed me. Just did my job the best I could. I think maybe I got off on a tangent. What was the question there?
What's one thing you learned from the time
Okay.
that you spent
Well, yeah,
overseas?
that was one of the things. I think that was probably one of the most important things. I learned how to perform in a career that is usable in the civilian world. Aviation. As a helicopter pilot for over 20 years, I became an instructor pilot in the big heavy helicopters and an instrument flight examiner. A couple of my friends got out and immediately got jobs in the airlines. One went to American, the other went to United, and both of them told me as an instrument flight examiner, which was a rating I had and they didn't even have, they said I could get into the airlines immediately. Well, that was usable to a civilian career shift, but I never did. I decided after all those years that I'd had enough of flying, and besides, I was getting old enough where it wasn't going to be. There's a mandatory retirement age for the airlines anyway. It's 60, and I was already in my mid-40s. I wasn't sure I wanted to continue in aviation as a career, although I could have successfully. And sometimes I wish I had.
After you got
So
out
I
of
went
the,
into nursing.
after you got out of the service, how did you end up in Colorado? Was it convenient? Were you
Oh.
already stationed here?
Yeah, I was. And I heard when I first came to Colorado, it was in '87. the very beginning of '87. I had heard that, well, you're going to like it so much here, you're probably going to want to retire because it's so nice. The weather's nice and the people and Colorado Springs is cool and all that. And I found that to be true. I enjoyed my first tour here at Fort Carson from 87 to 90. And then the Army said, okay, what do you want to do from here? And I told them, I said, all right, I know what you guys have in line for me. They wanted me to go to Korea for a one-year short tour and then come back to what would be my terminal in my career. And I said, okay, I really like it here in Colorado Springs, and I bought a home, which I pay off. It gets paid off in 1 year. Wonderful. That was my final goal, was to at the end of the 3-year tour here at Carson, to go to Korea for 1 year, short tour. They call it a hardship tour. You don't get to have your family with you, and then come back and serve another remaining 3 years here at Carson and retire, which is exactly the way it happened. I retired here at Fort Carson in last day of February of '94. Kept the house. My family got to stay there, and I have a wife and 2 children, and they're grown now and gone and happy, and everything's good. But now it's the empty nest, and I got to keep the house, and it worked out the way I wanted it to. So yes, I finished up my career here. Ooh, my biggest challenge. The forced separations, okay? When I told you I had that tour in Korea before my final tour here, that ended, before that tour started, I'm talking about Carson, Korea, Carson. Between the first Carson and Korea, I went to the Instrument Flight Examiner's course, which is one of the 3 hardest courses in the Army. I spent 8 weeks there, lost 20 pounds, successfully graduated from it, and it was tough. It was really a huge challenge, mentally and physically. But the bigger challenge was right from that course, I had to go straight to Korea for a year. So that required a 1.5 year separation from my family. My 2 daughters were 3 and 5 years old, and it's one of the hardest things, you guys don't know this yet, but one of the hardest things is for a man to do is to leave his family, especially when his children are young. And I hope you guys never have to go through that, because it's really, really, really emotionally stressful, okay? So I'll just say those were my 2 biggest challenges. As far as all of the technical stuff and learning how to be a good pilot and all that stuff, that wasn't hard, not for me. It is hard for some people. Some people have a knack to learn how to fly. It was tough for me at first, though. Beginning flight school, it was difficult. I had no flight experience, and all my classmates were, oh yeah, I got a private license, and to fly. Oh, my dad taught me how to fly our little barnstormer out there, and a lot of them had previous flying experience. I came in there cold, and it was tough. It was tough at first. They didn't make it easy on us. They weren't going to just make anybody a pilot. You had to really earn it and become we had to go through candidate school, just like at an academy, for 9 months. And half the day was spent as a cadet, and the other half a day was spent on the flight line. Very demanding. That was a challenge. So there's 3 for you. Favorite what?
What was your favorite ship?
What was my favorite aircraft that I flew? I really enjoyed flying the gunships, the attack helicopters in Vietnam. It was exciting, and I was young. I was 20 years old. And, well, actually, I turned 21 over there. And all of my, dreams when I was young of being a cool pilot and all that stuff, I was able to live through some of that. But it wasn't quite the way my dreams were, believe me. But the C model UH-1 was the gunship I flew. And it had a newly developed rotor system, which gave it more power, more ability to carry more ammunition and ordnance, and it was exciting. You kind of got a God complex when you're up there flying, and you're just kind of looking out there, going, "Okay, come on, you guys, I dare you," because we were authorized to roll in on any target that shoots at us first. If you could tell there was a target down there shooting at you, i.e. a tracer or something, you can immediately roll in on them. So you started feeling real powerful. You were cool. You had 38 rockets, and you had a 40 millimeter cannon in the front, and you had 2 miniguns that could fire 6,000 rounds a minute. Think about that for a second. That's 100 rounds a second. That's just a continuous, yeah, you'd pull the trigger on that thing, and every 5th round's a tracer, and it was like a laser beam. You could just make things disappear with it. 7.62 ammunition, that's 7.62 millimeter. That's about the same as a 30-06 round. So that was tremendous power. And you got this feeling like, oh, this is really great. But because you're young, we were young, and we loved the action, and we felt invulnerable like you do at your age. You do. You feel like nothing will ever hurt me, Believe me, that isn't true. I saw a lot of my friends go down over there. I'm talking about pilot friends. A lot of them went down thinking that they could get away with stuff and taking risks. My favorite aircraft was the CH-47 Chinook. You still see them out here flying. There's a unit down there at Fort Carson. The one that looks like the big banana with the 2 rotors?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, I flew that from 74 to 94, 20 years. Very versatile aircraft. It can do anything. It can even land in water. It can fly in any weather conditions, and at night it has all the systems that, including most of an autopilot system. It will not fly a coupled instrument approach, which you guys don't understand what that means. But it'll do almost everything else, maintain altitude, airspeed, and most of an approach, except for the very last part of it, in the clouds. It's very powerful. It can pick up 26,000 pounds, haul 26,000 pounds, and it can haul troops, up to 44 troops inside. Okay. Now, I've been out 20 some odd years now, okay? 94 is when I got out. What is that? 21 years I've been out now? It's been a long time. They've made some more improvements to that aircraft. I became an instructor in that, so there is not a whole lot I don't know about that aircraft and how to handle it. And I was the standardization officer at Fort Carson in my last tour, which means I was in charge of the program that trains all the pilots and evaluates all the pilots and all the crew members. So I was in charge of that. So there was a whole lot I knew about it, and maybe that's why it became my favorite aircraft, because I knew everything about it. Not everything, but great aircraft, and that's why the Army kept it, even after the development of the Black Hawk and the Apache, and the Army never decided to develop a newer, bigger, or better cargo aircraft, and that's what it is. Actually, they used the Chinook as a gunship in Vietnam for a while. They put miniguns in the doors and circle the target and just make it go away. Great aircraft, and I was very, very, very happy to have been an instructor in it. after I got out, I had to make a decision if I wanted to go down to Fort Rucker and become an instructor in those as a civilian. Those are some pretty well-paid guys. Or stay here with my 2 young daughters, which I made that decision to stay here with my 2 young daughters. And that's pretty much it. That's a pretty long dissertation on what's your favorite aircraft, isn't it? My second favorite was the attack helicopter, of course. I never got to fly the Apache, unfortunately. I kind of wished I had, but they brought that into the branch. They brought that into service right before I got out. Yes, my unit was an assault helicopter company in Vietnam, and I flew the Charlie model gunship for most of that 6 months. And at the very end, they brought in Cobras. And I only got just a basic checkout in it and a couple of missions before I had to leave. That was in 1970. Yeah, that's pretty amazing aircraft too.
Well, thank you for taking the time for meeting us.
Well, thank you. Gave me an opportunity to tell my story.
Thank you for meeting us with us, Mr. Werner. So where are you from originally?
I was born in Laconia, New Hampshire, and then I spent most of my life in Florida.
What was life like growing up for you?
Well, when I first was growing up, we didn't actually have computers, so I'm an old man. So, but it was good. I mean, I heard stories about my dad, in Korea, and he was over there during the conflict over there, so.
When and why did you join the military?
Well, my dad had a lot to do with that. He'd always told me stories, funny stories, never the bad stories, but I mean the funny stories about when he was on tanks, things like that. He drove the old M40 Pattons, I believe. And so I wanted to experience that, so I joined the Army right out of high school. Well, not right out of high school. I spent about 6 months on a delayed entry program. Worked, got some money up to get a car, and then once I bought the car, I went in.
And when you joined the military, was America at war at the time, or?
No, it was in 1983 was when I joined up, but it wasn't a war.
Would you be willing to share any combat stories or experience that you?
Okay, well, there's okay, here's one for you. We were coming up with the wide area in Iraq called the Wadi Abatin, okay? And we just caught the end of an Iraqi armor battalion that was retreating, so they dropped off some of their tanks to engage us. And I was a driver, okay? So I have a vision block here, here, and here, so I've got, a good view, and I saw a flash over to my left about 11 o'clock, because, you got 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I told the gunner left, on, and my gunner Raymond Val from Kentucky, and so he fired, and the turret popped off, started to burn, so we used it for cover. Well, we're sitting there, we're using the smoke for cover, and I see 3 heads pop out of a hole about 50, 60 meters behind the tank. So I called it out. They dropped the gun. The guys raised their hands. And what happened was with the engines, the way the engines are in the tanks, they were shooting dust about 30 or 40 feet behind the tank. And that's what they were shooting at because they couldn't see us because they were the desert camo. And they saw the tank on the left of them blow up. They saw the tank on the right of them blow up. And they just said, the heck with it, I don't care where the round goes, just shoot it. When they fired, they got out of the tank and dropped into the hole. And right about 10 seconds after they got in the hole, that's when we popped the tank. So, that's 3 of the luckiest men in Iraq, I think.
Yeah. What was life like after you got out? Like going back to civilian life?
Well, it isn't what you would expect. I mean, That's kind of hard to explain. It's not really all that easy. You know, I mean, you spend 8 years, you know, doing one thing, you know, and you come back and it's just something totally different. You know, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to transition. That's why I supplemented that by going in the National Guard after I got out of the military. You know, at least I had that to anchor me somewhat.
Yeah. How did you deal with the stress and pressure of everyday life overseas?
Well, there's a lot of ways, actually. You know, there's of course a lot of guys will drink. You know, there's also getting your friends together and doing role-playing games, things like that, or just going out somewhere quiet, which is what I like to do. Just go out somewhere quiet, out in the woods somewhere where there's a good view, and just sit down and just relax, and, you know, listen to the forest.
How did you stay in contact with your friends and family overseas?
Letters, most of the time letters. When I was stationed in Germany, I was able to collect calls, you know, but that was like once a month.
Yeah. What was one thing that you learned overseas that you use from a day-to-day basis over here?
Well, one thing I learned, well, duty. I mean, you know, if you got somewhere to be, like here in school, you got somewhere to be, you got to be there. You know, unless you cannot move, you be there. You know, be dependable.
Yeah, you're actually the earliest one, so that was pretty nice. When did you leave the service? Like,
well, I left the service, the actual, the regular Army, in December '91, right after we got back from Desert Storm. And I came back to Florida, my family, and I spent like about 2 years recharging my batteries, so to speak. You know, just kind of taking it easy, and then I went National Guard.
when you got out of the service and you picked where you want to live, why Colorado? Was it easy?
Well, actually, my son had a lot to do with that, and the military did also, because my son was in the military up in Fort Carson. You know, and then my dad passed away before we came up here, and I told him I'd take care of, I told him to take care of my mom. And the home that we were in, the landlord wasn't taking care of it, so we just packed everything up and came up here.
What was your daily life like as a soldier?
Well, I can sum that up in one word: repetition. Okay. So a lot of people, in situations like that, repetition, the same thing every day kind of soothes the mind, calms you down. It's like 5:30 in the morning, 0500 wake up. 5:30 in the morning we'd go out for PT, come back, then we'd get dressed and go to breakfast, morning chow. Come back, have first formation, get the daily regimen of what we're going to be doing that day. We go out and we do it, come back for lunch, go back out and finish it up if we had to, and then come back, and we were released about 5 p.m., 1700 in the afternoon. It was very repetitious. My greatest challenge in the military? Well, I could voice a lot of them, but not on camera. But I think my greatest challenge in the military was personally knowing what I was doing and then having someone come in that didn't, you know, and then actually standing there, you know, you're trying to show them exactly how it's done. You know, it's not done this way. It's done this way in the book, but it's actually done this way, sir. You know, and so a lot of the times they wouldn't listen. It's very frustrating. You know, because, well, let me give you a story of what I'm talking about. Grafenwehr is a range, okay, a tank gunnery range, okay. It's in Germany, and you have to qualify, okay, to actually be on part of a tank crew, okay. It's like you have to qualify like 700 or better on a range of 1,000 points. And we had just gotten the M1s over there, and they hadn't been main guns hadn't been fired yet, so we were using what they call a Telfair. It's a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on top of the main gun, okay, wired into the gunner's triggers to fire one round at a time, okay, timed to fire one round at a time. We got a jam in it, and I'm up in the loader's hatch, and we're letting my loader get some driving time because he was going to the platoon sergeant's tank to drive. So we're letting him get used to it. So I get out the old proverbial screwdrivers and pliers, you know, and I'm going to dig this stuck round out of there after we'd let it cook off for a little bit. Time passed, we got the orders to clear and elevate, so we cleared the guns, elevated them. I popped the top tray of the 50 cal, looked over. My lieutenant's 50 cal is still locked and loaded and level. Okay. Now you got to figure 50 caliber bullets big as my thumb. Okay. So I told him, you know, sir, you know, this is one of the things I was trying to tell him. Once you get once you get the order to clear and elevate that gun, you know, clear the rounds out of it. He didn't do it. And I said, okay. So I went over to the other side and I reminded him. He said, don't worry about it. I got it. And I said, yes, sir, not a problem. Right? So I'm standing there on this side of the gun tube's this way. His 50 cal is locked and loaded and leveled this way. I moved over to this side. It's a lucky thing I did because the gunner said something to him. He leaned back to ask him what he said, and he hit the butterfly triggers and sent 5 rounds at him past me. That's what I mean. You know, I mean, just because you have a West Point ring does not mean that, you know everything. You listen to your people. That's the biggest challenge, is trying to teach someone who won't listen. You know, so.
Alex?
No, it was not hit. Just that one close call when it cut off the antenna, and the tank shell cut off the antenna. But other than that, no, it was never hit.
Whenever I talk to veterans or people in the military, I always hear the term rose-colored glasses. Mm-hmm. And the way they explain that is they put on rose-colored glasses and they tell their family all the good aspects of the military, but they never really tell the bad. Do you believe that you have had to put on these rose-colored glasses from time to time?
Actually, yes, and in my personal opinion, I'll tell you why. Because unless someone has actually been in that type of a situation, there's just no way that that person will understand as much as that veteran needs them to understand. Okay, I mean, there's no way I could sit here and describe the highway between Basra and Kuwait City. Okay, I can't actually sit here and tell you in a way that you would actually envision it, and it's a good thing. Okay, that's something you don't need to see. All right.
Do you need some time?
No, I'm good.
All right.
No, I was never wounded. Bar fights are a different story, but yeah. I'm kidding. No, I didn't get. Tried not to get into trouble. Tried.
Tried.
You know, tried.
How well did that work out for you?
I've got a couple of Article 15s under my belt. You know, it's basically a slap on the hand. You know, it depends on the grade. You got summarized, company grade, and field grade. Summarized is just a slap on the hand. Company grade, they usually they'll take one rank for a certain amount of time and pay for a certain amount of time. And field grade means you're going up before the colonel, which means basically you're done. Personally, I'd rather file the paperwork, you know, because that dishonorable discharge follows you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that will haunt you. You know, so I'd rather file the paperwork.
Yeah.
Even though you spend about 20 days in personnel, but you know. All right.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you for meeting with us.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.